Hi there, welcome to Victim to Victor, the podcast dedicated to empowering abuse survivors and inspiring healing, hope, and positive change. I'm Anu Verma, a published author, and in every episode, I'll sit down with a guest and embark on an insightful conversation about trauma, as well as practical strategies to start the healing process. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy the show. And here is our wonderful Shelley Healy, all the way from London.
No, I used to live in London. I'm actually in Swindon at the moment.
The one.
Yeah, I'm in Swindon, but I did spend 4 years in London when my twins were really small.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, it's always the accent. I think anyone who's from North, we just assume everyone's from London.
Yeah, I'm actually from Wiltshire originally, but yeah.
Oh, lovely.
I'm in Swindon at the moment.
Oh, and welcome to the Victim to Victor podcast. It's so lovely to have you on, because I know today we've got a lot to talk about, which I'm really excited about. So as I explained in my introduction, Shelley is an angelic Reiki master, right?
Yes.
And an Akashic healer.
Yes.
Which we'll talk more about. And she's also a survivor of post-natal depression. And again, I'm really interested to find out about your journey on that. But first of all, I'd like you to talk about who you are and where you come from and why you're in this line of work that you're in.
Okay, so as you said, my name's Shelley. I grew up in a small village outside of Salisbury in Wiltshire. I sort of came from a very sort of religious background. All my family were very much heavily into the church. I was quite a inquisitive child, but I was always very sensitive to my surroundings and also the surroundings I was in at school. And that's kind of where it all started, really. Was me being a sensitive child, and sort of the initial sort of trauma I think that I had was from being at school. I was 5 years old, and my teacher threw me out of the classroom because she didn't like something that I'd said, and that was the moment that kind of my life changed. Like, I felt like I couldn't be myself. And so from that point, I put up a mask, and I was just, doing society, like doing, just going through the run of things and just going through the process of being a child, doing as I was told, keeping myself in this bubble that was Christianity, and real sort of indoctrinated into that kind of system of we don't sort of share what's going on outside of this bubble. And I think when I got married, it was all very much I'm getting married because I have to get married before I can have children. And also I felt immense pressure that I needed to follow in the footsteps of my parents, like, you get married, you have children. So by the time I had my daughters, it was almost like a people pleasing. And I know this might sound really bizarre. I did want to have children, but I think there was very much when are you going to have children then? When you get questioned, when are you going to have children? Yeah. And I was sort of thinking, okay, yes, I suppose that's the next step. But it was never really my choice. It was like, it felt like I'd been disempowered and put into this place of, you must, because this is how life is. You get married, you have children. So I went through a pregnancy with my twins, who were Pregnancy was fine up until about 6.5 months when I went into premature labour. I had them by emergency cesarean, and it was almost like I hadn't been pregnant at all. It was most confusing and traumatic experience, but I didn't realize that at the time. Like if I look back at that situation, I didn't realize how it was almost like I completely detached my emotions from what I'd just done. Like, do you see what I'm saying? So those 5 weeks that they were in intensive care, it was a really rough start in terms of I hadn't seen them for 24 hours at least. As it was, they were taken to ICU immediately. One of them stopped breathing twice on the way over and had to be resuscitated. So there was all this stuff going on, but I was completely numb to it. It was like, oh, so that's the end of my pregnancy then. There was no, there was no, 35 weeks, 36 weeks, there was no sort of that run up to having my children. And then 5 weeks in intensive care, with various complications, but managing through it. And I was doing trips to the hospital twice a day, which was, traumatic in itself, because I just want my babies at home.
That sounds tough. Very tough.
And I don't think my husband really knew at the time how, what was going on either. It was just, we were just doing life. This is how life is now. That's, sort of thing. And then when we eventually brought them home, they were off oxygen and they were off, they had their tubes removed. So the nasal tube that they were being fed with, they had that removed before they came home. So we were feeding them, but it wasn't an easy task. So there was all this stuff going on, but I fell into that overprotective, nurturing role. Initially, it was very much, I'm doing all of this. I need to keep up with this. I need to make it regimented. I need to be in control of this, because I was out of control with the pregnancy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then because I was doing everything, there was an expectation, I think, on my husband to also be that hands-on dad. But he'd also disconnected and didn't really know what he was doing either. So there was this big, if I'm looking back at it, I could have said, well, actually, he just didn't want to get involved, or, he just, he just saw me doing really well with it and thought, well, she's got this, I'll just leave her to it. And the reason why that was a thing really is because I was not communicating to him, A, my needs, B, the fact that I couldn't do it on my own. And it was, I'd got into this trap of being the mother, almost like a single parent, because my husband was always working, and it was just me with these two babies, and I felt so under supported that I did fall into that, like, I don't know if I can do this long term. And I was really questioning, can I do this long term? Like, but I wanted to feel all the things, with, the unconditional love. I wanted, I almost expected it to, like, oh, it'll show up one day.
Absolutely.
But it never did. And it was like, why am I not feeling like they're my, I remember saying when they came home from the hospital, it's almost like I'd picked up some children, or they were so disconnected from me. There just didn't seem to be a bond there.
Okay. I mean, what did you do with breastfeeding?
Okay, so I breastfed for 2 weeks, but I couldn't breastfeed them. So it was, it was all just very mechanical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, it wasn't. And then because I didn't have that connection with my babies, it was almost like my milk dried up. I was trying to express, but wasn't expressing enough.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where I just can't anymore. I couldn't anymore. So it was very much, okay, we'll switch them onto formula. You've done what you can.
Yeah.
But even then, it feels like you haven't done enough, because you're not continuing that breastfeeding, and the fact that they never actually got that chance to latch on. Yeah, of course it's gonna impact you, isn't it? Because every mother wants to try that, wants to try to have that experience, but unfortunately for me, it just didn't happen. And that sort of the postnatal depression was diagnosed quite late on, so it was about 3 or 4 months old. My twins were. I'd literally had to kind of try and get some support from somewhere. I was sort of I had family members sort of dotted around where I was sort of living, but I just wasn't that type of person to ring up and say, no, I need you now. I wasn't in that mental place of being able to. It was like, yeah, but this is my responsibility. I can't just be asking. And I didn't realize I was unwell until it got to a point where I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to get some help. So I did actually call my midwife. No, health visitor.
Yeah.
I called my health visitor, and she came round immediately. Luckily, she was on call anyway, and sort of came round and did sort of diagnose there and then that was what was happening. And then they put me on citalopram.
Okay.
I was on 30 milligrams of citalopram, which I was on for, I think, in total about 2 years.
Oh, did it help?
Well, I'm not sure that they did really. I mean, I could function. I'll give them that. I was definitely able to. My mood was lifted. I was definitely able to continue being a parent.
Okay, that's good.
But it didn't really do anything in terms of get to the reasons why I was so
the root of the problem.
In a space of not being able to take care of my kids as well as I wanted to. I'd almost become reliant on the tablets because they were getting me through, but I knew that wasn't really it was kind of making me numb. I was just doing a job rather than actually connecting with my children. And I feel like as well, when you're put on tablets, it can be a really sort of numbing experience in terms of you not really relating to your children, or you're sort of, I don't know, treating them like they're. I felt like it was almost like I was treating them like an inconvenience. If that's the right word. It was almost like I seemed to be really angry, like for some reason, and I couldn't put my. And I used to tell myself things like, people like me shouldn't have kids, and I was really horrible to myself, during that time. And it's like,
wow.
And I was kind of thinking, where is this all coming from? Like, when I was back in my rational mind, which wasn't until sort of much later, I thought, this is all wrong. I'm going to need to come off tablets, even though they're helping me to function. They're not really getting to the root of it, and I'm still acting like I've got this deep sadness and anger that I don't know where it's coming from at this point.
That's interesting. Even with the tablets, you could still sense that.
I was still reacting. I was still reactive. The tablets weren't making me any less reactive.
No. Okay.
What the tablets were doing were helping me to lift my mood most of the time, but there was still occasions where I would switch into kind of sleep deprivation was a huge thing for me, I think, because I wasn't getting enough sleep. Wasn't getting enough sleep. No tablet is going to help you with that. No. No antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication is going to sort out sleep deprivation, right?
No, exactly.
You can be on tablets and still react to your kids because you're just tired.
Exactly.
You're just tired and you just want somebody to come along and say, have a couple of days, I'll take kids, and just get yourself back to normal, and maybe we'll do this once a month so that you actually have some real time to yourself. And I really craved that, but I didn't know how to ask for it, and I didn't know who to ask.
It's showing vulnerability, I guess.
It really is. Really, I was trying to keep this this stiff upper lip because I suppose in some ways the religious side of my family were very much, we don't show what goes on behind closed doors.
Okay.
This is, this is who we are, and we're God-fearing people, and
which religion? Which religion?
It's I say religion. It's Christianity. It's Methodist. Methodist. Okay. Yeah. So we were kind of, there were all these rules, and you had to kind of, it was just a really sort of strict, church on a Sunday, not just once but twice, just real sort of from a really young age. Almost had to keep a mask on every time you walked out the front door.
Wow.
Because you couldn't be yourself ever. It's like you have to adhere to these rules, and that's how it is. And I think that goes with education and everything, doesn't it? They've all got these little sort of institution type sort of let's keep you restricted. And I think with the postnatal depression, because I'd kept in so much emotion from all the things that I'd always been told to kind of hide, and not been able to express myself, hence elemental expressions, because I just can't now. Because I'd kept that so hidden, it really impacted my relationships that I had sort of had, and then into my marriage, and again it was all very much I'm hiding, and then having the twins, and then hiding again, because if I was to be myself and then get bad reactions from people, because I'd grown up, if you're yourself you get bad reactions from people.
Awful.
So it really runs deep. It's not just you've got postnatal depression.
No.
Okay. If you look at depression as a whole, right? People like in the health and profession, sort of the health profession, or GPs and things like that, they give these labels to the stage of life that you're in, like, oh well, it can't be postnatal because you don't have children. So because you have children, we're going to label it postnatal depression. But it is actually trauma, it's depression, it's anxiety, and it's rooted in trauma. They just give it this name because they can't explain any other way. They're not in tune with the deeper reasons or the root of where that might come from. If they knew a person's actual history, they would realize that actually that's just surface level stuff. It is. You can't just throw pills at it.
No.
Don't get me wrong, I really needed my tablets. I really needed them. Some people don't do well with them. Some people are quite sensitive to them and go completely the opposite way. I know people that have actually taken their own lives from having been put on antidepressants. Wow. And then going in completely the opposite direction because they were given the wrong medication. Goodness. So it depends on the person as well, I think. But I'm not the sort of person to pill shame, because I think, you know,
No.
for some people they are really necessary.
Absolutely.
You know, we're sort of talking rare cases where people have sort of adverse reactions, or they can take you deeper into depression without you realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I really feel like, for me personally, it was I needed them just to get some sort of clarity initially of, okay, so what's happening now, what's going on. And they did do that for me. You know, it was very much, okay, now I can function. But there were days where I was really tired still. Because sorry.
So, I was going to say, because a lot of this, I don't know if you've ever looked into like the hormones, you know, because the fact that our hormones just go haywire, especially post birth. You know, we've got all this estrogen and progesterone running through our bloodstreams, which gives us that amazing hair and the bright skin. And then suddenly, when you give birth, whoosh, they just absolutely disappear.
It's depleted.
Exactly. So
yeah,
like in a way, I was thinking, wow, I wonder if we could take some kind of hormone replacement therapy post birth. You know, whether that could impact it.
Well, I feel like it depends again from person to person, doesn't it? Because it's not always hormones. It can be hormones for sure, because if you think about it, you've had this child inside of you, it's moved all your organs out the way, everything's dysfunctional for about between sort of well, in my case 6 and 9 months, right? So
wow,
it's all kind of, your body has gone through so many different changes during that time, that it's not surprising that you can be out of balance during like the first few months of having postnatal depression. The thing with me was, it wasn't just postnatal depression, it was childhood trauma. Okay, and as I was finding out sort of through my spiritual healing journey, it ran beyond that into past lives. Not all people do past lives, and that's absolutely fine. But in my line of work, I absolutely do believe in them. And I absolutely understand as well that things can be cyclical, in terms of, if you've experienced something in a previous lifetime, it can also impact you in this lifetime. Again, it goes so deep when you work with the spiritual side of things, that balances out the physical, emotional, and mental. I had to go on that full holistic journey, because I just knew it was right for me. I just knew that I needed that harmony. It was more about me getting my balance back through those 4 body systems. You know, and like you say, with the hormones as well, it's not just looking at the you know, the 4 body systems, but it's also looking at how you're eating during that time. Are you lacking in something? Because, you know, to be honest, on my second pregnancy, so with my son, I had him in Hillingdon Hospital, which was West London. And I came out of hospital without any. They were supposed to give me iron supplements. I didn't come home with any, and I just didn't think about it. And of course, then I became anemic, and then I was having all these panic attacks and symptoms that linked to being anemic. And I didn't realise again until it was far too late. And also vitamin D, I didn't have enough of that either. So the doctors gave me all these, and then slowly I came back. Again, it can be down to vitamin deficiency when you're pregnant. If the hospitals don't tell you, you kind of don't think about it, because your mind's been messed with. You've just had a baby, so you're not going to remember this stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's sometimes in hospitals there's a lack of not knowledge, I would say, just awareness of, you know, this woman has just been through an experience that has shifted their entire being. Of course they're going to need more. They've literally just had a baby. But I completely missed all that. Nobody had even mentioned it to me, and I had no clue. And because my second pregnancy wasn't the same as the first one, The first one was obviously, there was all this sort of the trauma related birth, but then again in my pregnancy with my son, again trauma, almost lost me. So I had to be pumped full of fluid because my blood pressure completely crashed. There was lots of stuff going on. But again, that experience changed me again, because with that almost losing consciousness and just being out of it, neurologically things just weren't quite right afterwards. It was like I was a completely different person when I came home. So there was all this stuff going on.
Wow.
No, so birth trauma is a huge catalyst for postnatal depression, also because you're also dealing with a separate trauma, besides whatever might have happened in childhood. So it's basically looking at those experiences and realizing that actually, unless you give them like the love that they deserve, like, okay, so you went through that, how can I nurture myself in releasing the emotions that are attached to that wound, extract the wisdom from that wound, because once you go through something like that, you have like a vast well of knowledge that you can help other people with, besides doing any sort of healing work or being trained in a modality. I mean, that was my bag. I went sort of through the angelic Reiki system when my twins were 4, 5. So I trained in that modality, angelic Reiki, when I was sort of about 32, 33 years of age, and I just went through that system of healing because I needed that to try and understand all the stuff that we'd gone through as a family, and it really assisted me to see exactly what was going on for me, just for me alone. And then after going through that journey, I sort of several house moves later, again there's a whole other story to that too, but I then started looking at myself in a completely different way, because I could also see that through the process of the depression, the anxiety and postnatal depression, sort of having that sort of label initially as a parent, I realized that I hadn't really looked at my needs fully. Like, what is it that I actually need in order to feel like I've got this parenting gig? Like, because I realized, I reached out to a relationship coach actually, in the end, because even though I was doing my spiritual work, there was something else missing that I really needed. I need to find out what this is and how I can sort of hold myself accountable for really looking at my needs quite deeply. And then I came into contact with a lady who I just knew I had to work with. When you get that impression from someone where you just know you need to work with them. And I reached out to her and I said, do you do anything on bonding? Because this was the subject that was coming up. Like, I couldn't bond with my kids, and I didn't understand why fully at that point. Like, I understood that the premature birth had impacted the situation, but I just needed somebody to kind of talk that stuff through. Like, why is it that we don't relate to each other as well as we could? Like, and is there a possibility we could bond? Like, I'm just putting it out there, like, can we bond? Because at the moment I don't understand why I can't, like, we don't relate to each other, like in a real heart, sort of deep heart and love space. So anyway, I reached out to this lady, and I I booked one-to-ones with her for 10 weeks. Best decision ever.
Yeah. Wow.
It was the game changer. I can honestly say that if you get a knowing or a feeling of somebody that you need to work with, you just go for it.
Really?
Because
what
basically what happened was, we discovered through the first session I had with her was that I felt like a child looking after children.
Okay. Wow.
I felt like I was a child still, mentally.
Yeah.
There was like this huge gap that I'd completely missed. Yeah. I had to go back in time, and I devised this way of how to converse with my younger self, intuitively, through writing a conversation. So I would tune in, write out in a quite a spiritual and like rooted way, and write out this conversation I was having with my inner child.
Okay. Wow.
So I would, ask her how she is today. What does she need? Is there anything I can help you with? What do we need to do next? Do you feel like you can give me some wisdom to help us in our journey so that we can help other parents and children? There was all this stuff, sort of, I needed to have a bond with my inner child before I could relate to my own children.
Yeah.
So it was very much a bringing myself back to myself. Like, I understand that you went through some stuff as a child, and it wasn't just, being bullied in school. There was a lot of other stuff going on too. Very traumatic stuff. From being sexually abused from the age of 7 right till the age of 13.
Wow.
So it wasn't just, having sort of a level of abuse from teachers. It was also, I was always also getting it outside of school as well. So there was this stuff, and because I hadn't really delved deep into that, and I didn't know how to ask for help, and I didn't know how to get my needs met, this was the game changer. It was all very much a process of, okay, I see you, I completely feel you, I'm so sorry your needs weren't met. I'm now 44, I was 42 at the time, 42 years of age. I'm now going to be the best parent you've ever had.
Wow.
And it was very much a conversation of, okay, so your parents may not necessarily have known what to do because of their trauma, right? They didn't understand because of their trauma. That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Now I get to be responsible for how I feel, to make myself safe, to make myself protected, right?
Yeah.
To make myself speak up, regardless of what, reaction I might get from the outside world or whatever. It's all very much you're not going to get hurt, because I'm now the grown-up, and I'm gonna be your parent. You deserve to have the best parent. I'm going to give you the best parenting.
Perfect.
And then from that, things started to shift in my own family dynamic.
Okay.
Meaning that I was seeing outside of me the work that I'd done within. So if I can explain that in simpler terms, basically, because I was loving on myself, I was seemed to be having more connection with my 3 children.
Perfect.
It's not perfect. We still have our things, but we stand back and we say, okay, well, so what's going on here?
Okay.
It's all very much from a viewer's perspective, an observer's perspective, rather than wading in. I can't say I don't react anymore, because yes, I'm a mum, and yes, I get tired still, and yes, I do react. However, there's a difference this time in that I'm so aware of my triggers that I can go to my children and actually hand on heart apologize if I've hurt or upset them. Does that make sense? So it's very much I understand the whole, like, the dynamic of the ancestral, like, being passed down, traits. you know, your parents did sort of parent you in a certain way. You then think that that's how it's done, so then you take that forward, and because it's an energy exchange, that's how it works. So, and if you've got anything like that in your family lines, either side, it doesn't matter how far it goes back, it can be passed down. Even if you haven't experienced it physically or directly, it can actually, those traumas can actually be passed through for you to kind of say, no, this isn't happening, I'm going to resolve this. That's all there is to it. So it's, and sort of through that process, it meant then that I could delve deeper into spiritual healing practices, which meant that I could train in a different area to bring in deeper wound healing, working through the Akashic records, which is a system that goes incredibly deep, and it brings past lives and everything else into it too. Not a quick fix. It's something that if you want consulting on, you need to give yourself that time and space to do it, because it's life-changing. So I wouldn't be where I am today had I not had the assistance of looking at life as a holistic vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just as easy as just popping a pill, as you all know now. It's about looking at the root of the issue, which when you're going to see your GP, you don't have that time. We have like 10 minutes max with our GP, and you can't talk about your traumas. So this is why I feel it's so important to try and get additional support, whether that's through a spiritual healer, a therapist, and only that way you'll be able to uncover the root of the problem. So what would you recommend for my listeners, if they might be pregnant now, and they might be worried about postnatal depression?
Well, I think the first thing to say would be that you might not. There's every chance you will have your child and you will love your child. If there's anything that I can give you to take away that's of value today, really nurture yourself. Tune into yourself. It's all, it's great to have a healer, a mentor, a spiritual guidance, going through the Akashic records. Fantastic if you feel like you're drawn to it. But if there's one thing I can say, as for being a new mum or somebody that's going through pregnancy again and is worried about that, it is just purely hand on heart. We've got this. We've got this. Whatever we've done, whatever we've experienced, we've got this. And I never, if you're having a conversation with your younger self, because this is where the wound's coming from and the triggers are coming from, if you're questioning about whether or not you're going to have postnatal depression, that's your inner child worried that you're not going to be able to cope, because you still feel like a child.
Absolutely.
You still feel like a child. You have to take it at that level and say, I am never going to let anyone hurt you. Really nurture yourself with the right foods. Look at your health as an overall perspective. And people like me, we're out here to help you. But you can do this yourself. You can do this yourself. You're more powerful than you think. You've been permitted to think that you can be. I just feel like for the many sort of new mums and second time mums, third time mums out there, and beyond that, it's always a learning journey. Just see the learning in it. Even if that happens, even if you do fall into depression, there are people like me out there that can help you, that can give you accountability, that can take you through the process of, okay, if you feel like you're out of control, we can get you back into that headspace of, okay, so I have this child. How do I feel around this child? What is it that I need to do to get myself into the right headspace to give my child that love that they deserve? And actually, I deserve myself first.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, it is true, because when we have a child, it's all about them and we forget about ourselves. So it's understandable that our
Yeah,
needs aren't met. And especially,
absolutely.
because a lot of partners are out working as well. So, we're not with them during the daytime. So,
Exactly,
mm,
exactly. And not only that, I think sometimes the dads feel a bit powerless too,
mm,
because they want to help.
yeah,
They do
they want
actually
to.
want to help, but sometimes they don't know how, and their inner
Yeah.
child is, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that's okay,
True.
and just if you find that the partner isn't completely hands-on, like, it's because they're scared.
Mm,
They're scared, and they're not bad people. They just have they've probably gone through similar or same
mm,
traumas that we have, and they've never had that aired, they've never had it seen or heard.
no.
They've never been able to acknowledge it for themselves because they're too avoidant of feeling their own feelings. Men are very much like this. They don't do their feel, they're not
Yeah.
open and honest like the female are,
Yeah.
because again, that's been kind of like the patriarchy has come in, and you don't cry and you don't show emotion and you don't do this, and it's ingrained in them, and our expectations as women have to kind of you know give them a break. Like,
Yeah.
they do
It's true.
try, like they want to help, it's just the
Mm,
communication needs to be there before that can
yeah.
happen.
Exactly. And like you said, when we've been brought up in a suppressed culture,
Yes,
then communication's difficult. I remember I found
it
it
is.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like that whole shame of like
Mm,
being like, I can't, I don't measure up, I'm not enough. It's this whole not
yeah.
enoughness, like I'm
Yeah.
not enough to be this child's parent, I'm not enough to like give this child the love that it deserves. What if I
Yeah.
do it wrong?
Yeah.
Was
Absolutely.
one for me.
Yeah.
What if I do it wrong? And what if I've got like my
True.
mum or my mother-in-law on my back saying, oh, we did it like this, you should do it like this. Let's compare
Oh,
stories. Let's not
God.
compare stories,
Hate that.
because it's largely disempowering.
Oh,
And I
I just.
really feel like a lot of women and a lot of men need to hear this message, like,
Mm,
you have got this, you have got this.
yeah.
um you know Holding space for parents in this way is really transformative. And
Mm,
I was always sort of, when I first started my journey, if I could just help one person
yeah.
just get into that, like, clear mind of, oh God, it's not just me, one.
Mm,
And secondly, I don't have to blame anyone
mm,
anymore. I can just take responsibility that my needs weren't met as a kid. Okay, let's look at that. And
yeah.
then see how things change. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely. I love that attitude. Yeah. And I remember with me as well, it was the fact that, okay, I was comparing myself to other moms and I was putting myself down because I felt like I wasn't as good as them as well. And that's a horrible feeling.
I know. I think for
Mm,
me, it was the mums and toddlers groups. I used to try and get out of the house and meet mums and things like that. But there was all this pressure. Oh, are they walking yet? Oh, are they done that potty
ugh,
training?
yeah,
Oh, and it's like, no, individual child having a unique learning experience. End of story,
that's
right?
it.
If they're
Exactly.
not potty trained by the time, they're 3.5, there's
True.
something wrong.
Yeah.
Something wrong. No, no. What it is that their mind is different to your child's mind. I'm not
Yeah.
forcing my child to do anything that he's not ready for. I will take my cues from my child because I'm guiding him. I'm
Mm,
not in control of him or her. Do
exactly.
you see?
Yeah.
I'm just talking from my son's perspective because
No, yeah. It's
he's I was
important.
basically child led with him, but
Oh, right. Yeah.
yeah, it's very much
Yeah.
these children are need to be nurtured,
Yeah.
and in order to do that, you need to nurture yourself first.
Exactly.
um
Foremost, yeah, we're
yeah,
the important beings, aren't we?
we
So,
are we are
mm,
we,
absolutely.
we, we can't function. I gave this analogy to my son, who is now 9. He is autistic, and
Mm,
he but he's incredible. Like,
yeah.
he's absolutely incredible. He blows my mind every day.
Wow.
And I said to him, Mummy can't help you because she needs to plug herself in. She's got 2% battery.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
He relates it to his tablet, basically. So his device that he uses to play Minecraft and things like that. He's very much, oh, Mummy's got 2% battery. I'll just leave her be for a bit, because he can be quite demanding. So it's like, Mummy's time, go ask Daddy, or go ask your sisters, basically.
Yeah.
Go. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But there's little analogies like that are really, really helpful for kids, because they see it in a completely different way. Then it's like, oh, Mummy doesn't want to spend time with me. Am I not enough for her? And all this thing. No, it's because Mummy's got 2% battery and she just needs a bath, or or she just needs to kind of sit in silence for half an hour just to breathe and and just to have my time.
Oh, thank you. So again, that's such a powerful story of your journey, and wow, I'm really wowed at just how you've managed to handle it, and especially what you're doing now. I mean, it'd be great if you could explain more about angelic Reiki, and then just go more into Akashic healing as well.
Yeah, so angelic Reiki is a hands-on, mainly a hands-on healing, although I can do it remotely. And it's very similar to Reiki in the sense that when you're attuned, you get downloaded with symbols at the time of attunement, so you don't necessarily need to remember the symbols, but what it is, it's kind of a bit like psychic surgery. So hands-on, so I'll have a hand on the higher heart and a hand on the solar plexus, and then I will then ask your specific or perfect angels to come in and give you the most positive and for your highest good, the best healing that you can have in this moment. And then I allow them to run the energy through me as a conduit for 20 minutes. That's one way of doing it. There's several different ways you can administer angelic Reiki. There's a multi-dimensional way of doing it as well. There's all sorts of different ways. There's a self-healing method. I still use angelic Reiki in my sessions occasionally. It's very much, my spiritual journey has been based on that, even though I've had treatments from other sort of styles of Reiki like Seiken, Yasui, Karuna, things like that. I've had sort of little snippets of experience of, but angelic Reiki really spoke to me, because for some reason, when I had any sort of healing from any other practitioners, it was very much they kept saying to me, oh, we've got all these angels here, they're ready to work with you, they need to work with you. So when I went into angelic Reiki, it was very like, okay, so these angels want to work with me. So on a spiritual level, that really, really spoke to me. So that's why I learned that one, and I kind of used it more as a personal and spiritual development tool, more than I did as a practice for other people. However, I did have lots of testimonials from clients that did have angelic Reiki healings from me, and completely wowed people from, clearing their energy so much that they fell pregnant when they've been trying for years and things like that. There's all these little stories that I've got. Prolonging a cat's life was the funniest one, because he'd been put into shock from being scared from a dog, and sort of had lost, was completely non-responsive for 2 days, and then I sent healing to this cat, and as it was on its way to the vets to be put down, it jumped out of the car and ran back in the house.
Oh my goodness, fantastic.
There's that one. There's all sorts of little sort of stories about that, but when I came into an Akashic record, that was very much because I was working on myself through the traumas. I felt like I needed something next level to sort of learn to bring to other people, sort of on a deeper level, beyond what I'd already learned. And so I've been on sort of a 6-month journey through this Akashic practitioner level of healing, which is very much like a consulting base. So if somebody perhaps was to come to me for an Akashic reading, I would need their date of birth. I would then channel where their soul origin is. So, you know, where their soul comes from, what characteristics they would have as a soul, you know, and also the shadow side of the soul profile as well, because there's polar opposites. You know, bring through their healing methods, what suits them most, and that kind of thing, what they value. And also sort of going through any layer that needs to be released right now through the power of incantation. So we go through certain blocks in the energy field, where they're being held in the chakras, whether they're past life, ancestral, or inner child, or present, that kind of thing. So it's very, very in depth, and it's very time consuming and very sort of involved. It's very involved and interactive healing, and the reason why I'm doing it is because I had mine read by my mentor, and it absolutely blew me away. And each layer that I keep sort of pulling up for myself, I keep becoming that empowered person that I always felt that I could be and should sort of, I am, basically. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool, and one that I'm very, very excited to get sort of working with, especially on levels like sexual abuse, you know, and trauma and things like that, because that's something that I've already worked with and around sort of different traumas and things that I've had deep experience with, that I've managed to transform, and I'm now very well equipped to transform other people's lives with that tool too.
Oh, fantastic! And again, it's the first time I've come across you know, Akashic healing, so thank you so much for explaining that to myself and my listeners. And so
you are welcome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the fact that you're going through this process at the moment, you're like living proof that it works. Yes,
absolutely. And I mean, there's always layers, isn't there, of stuff, but I find that with each healing that it goes, you know, you just get more expansive, and you just really tune in to that profile of your soul, and like really bring out those gifts and abilities that you have, because we're all sort of born with gifts and abilities. It's just we get so disempowered with conditioning, we don't get to show those until like we're much later on, when we get to think, hang on a second, is this all there is? Like eat, work, sleep, repeat. What do you see what I mean? So it's like, is there more to it than that? And I think some people sort of go through life with not really understanding that actually there's a deeper level to yourself that can bring out talents and gifts and specializations that work with you, that actually you could have a complete passion for and live your best life with.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. And so what are you doing now? Are you actually do you have your own healing practice now?
I do. So I run under the name of Elemental Expressions. So I am on Instagram at elemental.expressions, and the website is www.elemental-expressions.co.uk, and all my services are on there. And at the moment, as I'm coming to the end of my practitioner for Akashic Record, I have plenty of clients booked in. So I'm fully booked till April at the moment. With those, but on a consulting level, that's huge for me, because that's one of my sort of specializations is in consulting as a soul.
Beautiful. That okay, fantastic. And again, I'll be adding all your links into this description box so that my listeners, they can get in contact with yourself if they wish to work with you, or I guess if they have any questions as well about any of your journey and your processes, which is fascinating. So
I mean, I've started sort of channeling my own sort of meditations and stuff like that, just so that people have something that they can use on the daily. To get them into new habits and things like that, because sometimes when you go through life and you know you don't give yourself that time to kind of ground, not take on anybody else's energy, you know, really sort of protect your energy in a spiritual way, can be really, really empowering. And there's plenty of stuff like that on the website that you can kind of like tune into and and just have a look at. So yeah, it's all good.
Amazing. Yeah, no, again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
You are welcome.
Very empowering story, I must say. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, where this journey takes you, with your new healing practice. Yeah, so
thank you very much.
So listeners, I hope you enjoy this episode, and as I said before, please do get in touch if you have any questions. It's been an honor serving today, and again, thank you to my beautiful guest Shelley for sharing such an empowering story.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. So I shall see you all in the next episode. Until then, keep shining your light. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Victim to Victor. Subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes, and be sure to follow the podcast on socials to keep updated on what's next, and share Victim to Victor with family and friends to help grow the community and spread the positive healing energy. You may also wish to join me on the path to self-discovery and sign up to my 12-week self-empowerment plan, which will be linked below.